Part 17. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 161. The old man in green robes had a hooked nose and sharp eyes. The aura on his body was like thunder, ready to strike. Just being stared at by the old man's eyes, Xiaopingan felt that his heart was beating like a drum and he was sweating like syrup. There is great fear and pressure. There were 4 young people standing next to the old man, 2 men and 2 women. They were about 20 or 30 years old. They were calm and heroic. They looked at him with eyes that were full of scrutiny and a hint of coldness. The 4 young men were all wearing armor. The shape of the armor made Xiaopingan feel familiar. The armors worn by several of them had shoulders and hanging edges. The shoulder pieces are square pieces of armor, with a square collar. The placket is on the right shoulder and under the side armpit, and is fastened with 3 sets of thread buttons. The armors of the 4 people are all decorated with gold and silver. The front, back and chest of the gold and silver armor are decorated with gold and silver. The lower part of the drill has diamond-shaped gold and silver pieces attached to the nail plate to form a pattern. The nail plate without gold and silver pieces is decorated with 2 overlapping diamond shapes made of red ribbons. In addition to the armor, each of the 4 people has a scaly iron helmet on their heads, which looks majestic. In Xiaopingan's eyes, the armors worn by these 4 young men were typical Han Dynasty styles. However, the armors were probably customized by 4 people. There were some differences in length and size. There was also a hint of divine power on the armors. Those armors there was a faint brilliance in the film, and the armor seemed to be a magic weapon. Could this guy be so poor that he actually dares to stare at our magical weapons and armors? A small character who is not even in the Yang realm, could he still want to take advantage of our magical weapons and armors? The old man in green robes stood there. A tall, muscular young man with a dark face on the left looked at Xiaopingan coldly. The corners of his mouth turned up, revealing a sarcastic smile. He licked his lips eagerly. Elder Lu, this guy is in Wansong Jiayuan, I guess he is also in the same group as those thieves who want to hide the secret. He is not a good person, let me kill him. As he spoke, the young man took a step forward, and the divine power in his body suddenly surged, making Xiaopingan feel a great crisis and smell the breath of death. Xiaopingan stood there with his head held high and no fear on his face. He already felt that once the other party made a move, he would not be able to escape. However, Xiaopingan did not give up the opportunity to communicate with the other party. He knew that the more this happened, the more likely he would be to escape. At such times, the less you show any cowardice and want to escape, the more you respond improperly, you may trigger an attack from the other party. Just look at the corpses on the ground and you will know that those who were in the 1 Yang realm and the 2 Yang realm were all slaughtered here. Not to mention myself, as soon as the other party takes action, I will be really doomed. You are strangers to me, and you will kill people as soon as we meet. How can you be a good person if you act like this and care about human life? Xiaopingan retorted. How dare you speak harshly? The dark-faced young man's eyes flashed with murderous intent, and he took a step forward, about to take action. Wait a minute. The old man in green robe spoke slowly, and raised his hand slightly. The young man with black face suddenly stopped, lowered his hand, and took a step back. What's your name? The old man asked. My name is Xiaopingan, Xiaopingan said calmly. For some reason, he had a strong intuition in his heart that he couldn't lie at this time. If he told a lie, it would be bad. Why are you here? The old man continued to ask. I don't know why I am here. I woke up just now, and I was in the mountain forest over there. I was naked and had nothing on me. I felt the smell of blood here, so I came over to take a look, and then when I found these corpses, I had no clothes or anything on me, so I borrowed theirs for use. I didn't take it for nothing. I took their belongings and helped them rest their souls, so I was able to clear both ends. Xiaopingan said loudly and calmly. Although his words concealed some important information, not a single word in them was false. They were all true. Xiaopingan just did not say how he got here. That's all. Could this man have been robbed by the lost soul technique? Even his clothes were stripped off. A woman on the right side of the old man looked at Xiaopingan and said softly, "Sister Qing, it's possible. You see, he wants even the scraps of copper and iron on the ground, as long as he can sell anything for money. He must be really poor and crazy." The people gathered in Wansong Jiayuan now are all people from all religions. Yes. Another man also said something. After listening to Xiaopingan's words, the old man in green robe looked at Xiaopingan with a slightly softened gaze, and the pressure on Xiaopingan suddenly eased a lot. "Did you summon that dog?" the old man in green robe asked, pointing to the black dragon not far away. Xiaopingan looked at the black dragon and found that the black dragon was dozens of meters away. There was a black mist on the black dragon, which wrapped the black dragon. The black dragon was motionless, as if it was frozen. No wonder the black dragon didn't react just now. It turned out that someone had used a secret method to restrain him. Xiaopingan nodded. "This Wansong Jiayuan is the family territory of my Tang family. Outsiders are prohibited from entering. You have violated the laws of our Tang family by breaking into Wansong Jiayuan privately." The old man in green robe said and looked at the black man who had just spoken and wanted to finish off Xiaopingan. The face-faced young man glanced at him and said, "Tang Long, capture this person and bring him back to Dawan City to be dealt with by the criminal law hall." Yes, when the black-faced man named Tang Long heard this, he pointed at Xiaopingan without saying a word. A black rope appeared out of thin air and flew towards Xiaopingan. In the blink of an eye, Xiaopingan tied up a strong one. As soon as the rope was tied, Xiaopingan not only felt that his body could not move, but even the divine power in the secret mandala was imprisoned. The methods of summoners in this world are indeed incredibly powerful. Although he was tied up, Xiaopingan breathed a sigh of relief. If these people wanted to take him back to Dawan City, they would not kill him. They would just deal with it slowly later. Xiaopingan had just been tied up here. In the sky more than 100 miles away in the east, a brilliant colorful light suddenly burst into the sky. The light was so dazzling. Xiaopingan looked over and saw a golden portal appearing in the seven-colored light. The portal suddenly opened, and then a figure emerged from the portal and flew directly in the direction of himself. Yes, it flew over. Xiaopingan's divine power was imprisoned, but his remote viewing ability was still there. Through remote viewing, he saw that the flying figure was a big man with a beard and a huge wine gourd on his back. Behind the bearded man, there were two more people who pushed open the golden portal in the void and followed closely. Damn, it flies too. Xiaopingan almost wanted to rub his eyes. The three figures, like three rainbows, pierced the sky directly. They flew as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, they flew into the sky within sight of the naked eye. "Lu Changlao, stop him, that person has taken all the void secrets." An angry voice came from the distant sky, rumbling like thunder, even Xiaopingan heard it. As soon as he heard this voice, the old man in green robe who was standing on the stone suddenly flew up. With a casual move, two people with red lights flashing and swords on their feet appeared beside the old man in green robe. Powerful summons like sword immortals, the two summoned sword immortals stepped on their long swords, flew across the void, and directly killed the bearded man. Ha ha ha, the secret treasure in space is for the virtuous. The entrance to the secret treasure just happened to appear in Wansong Jiayuan. It has something to do with your Tang family. You, the Tang family, are not capable of occupying such a treasure. Grandpa, just take it, and bite Grandpa's ass if you can. The bearded man was talking, and as soon as he let go, Xiaopingan saw him scattering shells all over the sky. Yes, it's a shell. The shell suddenly shattered in the void and turned into a ferocious bone dragon more than 100 meters long with black mist billowing all over its body. The dark dragon summons. The young men in armor in front of Xiaopinggan exclaimed and changed their expressions. The bone dragon opened its mouth in the sky, and the strong wind roared, and it swallowed the two sword immortals who rushed towards it. The next second, the bone dragon opened its mouth, and black clouds suddenly billowed in the sky with a radius of 100 miles, covering the moon. Among the black clouds, there were several loud rumbling noises, like thunder. After a while, the black mist in the sky dispersed, and the bone dragon and the bearded man had disappeared. 3 figures fell from the sky. Elder Lu landed on the ground, his steps a little shaky and he staggered. The other 2 people fell to the ground and did not stand too firmly, and one person vomited a small mouthful of blood. The 3 people's faces were ashen. Xiaopinggan was stunned, especially when the big man summoned the dark dragon just now. The power was indescribable. This is the power of a powerful summoner. Seen nothing, heard nothing. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 162. The 2 people who landed behind, one was wearing a black robe and the other was wearing a blue robe, each with silver hair. Among them, the man in the black robe was skinny, with skin like a dead tree and hands like chicken feet. He coughed and vomited blood. The body in the black robe trembled when he coughed, like a withered tree trunk that could be broken at any time. The old man in the blue robe had a round face and small eyes, was slightly fat, and his injuries were not serious. "Who is this person?" The old man in black robe coughed and bent over. Red blood dripped from the fingers covering his mouth. When he turned his face to the side, he said with a when his bloodshot eyes looked at Xiaopinggan. Xiaopinggan felt goosebumps all over his body. Xiaopinggan did not look at the old man. He lowered his head silently. The look just now made Xiaopinggan's heart skip a beat. He felt that the old man's eyes were too fierce. "Elder Tang, this person is the one who entered Wansong Jiayuan tonight to fish in troubled waters. I am going to send him to the criminal law hall for disposal," Elder Lu said. The old man named Elder Tang looked at Xiaopinggan again. "I will go back to the city first, to report to the head of the family." After saying this, the old man in black robes rose into the air and disappeared in an instant. In the northeast direction. "I'll go back with Elder Tang. The rest of the team here will be left to you, Elder Lu," the elder in blue robe said, and his figure suddenly rose into the air and headed northeast. When the 2 people left in the air, Elder Lu's expression slowly recovered. He glanced at Xiaopinggan and said directly to the 4 young people, "You escort him back to Dawan City first, and I will patrol here again, lest someone take the opportunity to cause trouble and affect the prestige of the Tang family." Elder Lu said, waving his sleeves. A string of fire flew out from his side and fell directly on the corpses in the valley. Those corpses suddenly it burns and turns to ashes in the blink of an eye. Then Elder Lu also broke through the air and left in another direction. Xiaopinggan has been paying attention to the situation in the surrounding mountains and forests with his remote viewing ability. When the colorful lights and golden portals appeared in the sky just now, there were indeed some strange movements in the surrounding mountains and forests. He could feel more than one breath of divine power coming towards him. The place where the colorful light appeared quickly approached. However, after the ensuing battle, the colorful light in the sky and the portal disappeared, and the aura of divine power in the nearby mountains and forests also dispersed. "Let's go too." The black-faced young man named Tang Long grabbed Xiaopinggan, carried Xiaopinggan on his shoulders, and said something to a few other people. The 4 of them did not stay in the valley longer, and took Xiaopinggan with them. Pinggan rushed towards the northeast. Although the 4 people couldn't fly, their speed when running on the ground was also incredibly fast. They were just like the legendary Qinggong. They could fly over walls and climb over mountains and rivers. With one step, they were more than 10 meters away on the ground. The wind was blowing fast, and the few people crossed the 7-8 meter high rock wall and the chasm river more than 10 meters wide in one step. That speed was at least twice as fast as Xiaoping's current fastest running speed. The best thing is that those 4 people, 2 men and 2 women, didn't feel tired at all. Xiaoping's weight was not light, but being carried by the black-faced young man did not affect the man's speed at all. After running for more than an hour in the mountain forest with tall pine trees everywhere, the sky gradually became brighter, and a bright red sun jumped out from the eastern horizon. Xiaoping was being carried and couldn't move. There was only strong wind blowing in his face, and occasionally branches and grass leaves flew past his head and face. After being carried and running for more than an hour, Xiaoping has disheveled hair and looks pitiful. Ahem, can you guys tell me which continent and region this Dawan city is? Xiaoping asked as he was being carried. You went to our Tang family's Dawan city, Wansong Jiayuan, to hunt for treasure. Since you don't know where Dawan city is, Tang Long asked, carrying Xiaoping and running away. I didn't mean to offend the Tang family. My mind is blank now. Except for my name, I almost don't remember anything else. I even forgot where I came from. Xiaoping sighed. Tone. This is the consequence of being hit by the lost soul technique. The lost soul technique will make you forget many things. I heard that in some serious cases, after being hit by the lost soul technique, you will become an idiot. Your overall intelligence is like that of a 7 or 8-year-old child. Likewise, you are lucky to be able to remember your own name, said a woman traveling with us. This guy is indeed lucky. I don't know how many people have died in Wansongyuan these days. How many people died without even touching the portal of the void secret? It's good that he can still survive. In fact, I'm most annoyed by you sluts, a summoner who is not very capable, but always wants to get some secret treasure and reach the sky in one step. It is really beneficial. Isn't it your turn? Wouldn't it be better to become a disciple and practice in a down-to-earth manner? Another man also said. Another woman traveling with him sighed and glanced at Xiaoping sympathetically. Remember, this is the southern region of Jinyu continent. Hearing this answer, Xiaoping was shocked. This is not Majiazhu, and I have ended up in Jinyuezhu inexplicably. The distance between Jinyuezhu and Majiazhu is more than hundreds of millions of miles. It seems that no one in the first few batches of people who participated in the Tianmending project has set foot in Jinyuezhu. I wonder how Yan Duo and the others are doing now. I don't know what year or month it will be when we meet again. Xiaoping was silent. Once here, everything could only be done by himself. At noon, a huge city on the plain appeared in front of Xiaoping. It is a city with a strange style. Looking from a distance, you can see the chimneys erected high in the factory areas around the city. In addition to the chimneys, in that city, those chimneys are eye-catching and dazzling. It is a tall spire. Surrounding those tall spires are densely packed rows of various buildings. In this world, summoners with status and strength will build their own summoner tower, and the summoner tower has become one of the symbols of summoners. Xiaoping knew this before, and saw one with his own eyes. There are so many summoner towers in the city, which still gives people a shocking feeling. The sky in this world is very blue. Even with those tall chimneys standing there. Under the blue sky and white clouds, there were several airships floating in the sky. That picture is full of strange beauty. What made Xiaoping feel even more incredible was that he saw a grasshopper. They were huge grasshoppers that were more than 3 to 4 meters long. Some grasshoppers were all emerald green, and some grasshoppers were yellowish or tawny. Those grasshoppers had reins on their heads, and there were people on their backs. There are saddle-like seats, and many people are riding on grasshoppers as they drive. Those grasshoppers were running on the ground like flying, and from time to time they would jump up, jump into the air more than 10 meters, spread their wings, glide in the air and fly hundreds of meters, land on the ground again, and then fly up again. That speed, it's faster than driving and can adapt to any terrain. When encountering a river dozens of meters wide, those grasshoppers jumped up from the ground and flew across the air without crossing the bridge. The people sitting on the backs of the grasshoppers all rode the grasshoppers like horses, holding the reins in their hands and looking calm. Those grasshoppers that are more than 3 meters long can only sit on one person, and some grasshoppers that are more than 4 or 5 meters long can even sit on 2 people. There are also grasshoppers, not jumping or jumping, walking obediently on the ground, and pulling a carriage behind them, which contains various vegetables and fruits. The person riding the grasshopper is wearing a straw hat, dressed casually, and dressed like farmer. The means of transportation for most people in Dawan City is grasshoppers. Apart from grasshoppers, there are almost no four-wheeled vehicles on the road here. In addition to grasshoppers, there are also huge dragonflies in the sky. The dragonflies were like helicopters, flying through the sky one by one with a buzzing sound. Almost all dragonflies had people sitting on their backs. This city has no city walls, but there is a huge castle complex in the central area of the city. On the wall at the entrance of the castle, there is a huge Tang character. The font of the Tang character is exactly the same as that of Dian Kingdom. The 4 sons of the Tang family led Xiaopingan through the city. Xiaopingan was dazzled when he looked at the houses, buildings, grasshoppers, and dragonflies in the city. There are factories, schools, and shops in this city. Xiaopingan also saw the bustling and noisy vegetable market. Someone was quarreling in the vegetable market, and their faces turned red. The police on the street were blowing whistles to direct traffic, and some police were chasing the thief. The thief was scurrying among the crowds of people on the street, and got into the alley in the blink of an eye. The city is full of life. If you don't look at the grasshoppers and giant dragonflies, the city feels like those big cities in Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries. The grasshoppers that entered the city were like horses, tied one by the roadside. There are actually trams in the city. The liveliness of Dawan City exceeded Xiaopingan's imagination. Xiaopingan, who was being carried, also attracted a lot of attention along the way. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 163. This man broke into Wansong Jiayuan of our Tang family without permission. Elder Lu asked me to come back and hand him over to the Xinglu Hall. The black-faced young man Tang Long came directly to the Xinglu Hall after bringing Xiaopingan to the Tang family's castle. Until this time, Xiaopingan's hands were still tied. Are they those promiscuous summoners again? A middle-aged man with a mustache in the criminal law hall came over and looked at Xiaopingan from head to toe. A lot of them have been arrested in the city these days. Does Elder Lu have anything special to say about such a role? No special instructions. Okay, I understand, just leave it to us. The man with the mustache smiled and waved his hand, and 2 disciples from the criminal law hall came over, holding 2 strange silver-white fingers as wide as one finger. There was a metal ring, and there were chains in the metal ring, which were similar to handcuffs. They were directly put on Xiaopingan's wrists, and locked with a click. As soon as the metal ring was locked, Xiaopingan felt that his divine power and physical strength were completely imprisoned all of a sudden, and he couldn't use any strength in his body. It was like the divine power in the secret mandala was also frozen. Tang Long waved his hand, and the rope that tied Xiaopingan flew back to his hand. This man has space equipment integrated into his body, and there are weapons inside. We need to search it, don't let him take advantage of it. The man waved his hand and said to the 2 disciples of the criminal law hall, take him through the empty gate and put him in prison. Yes. Xiaopingan was escorted by the 2 disciples of the Xinglu Hall towards a room in the Xinglu Hall, and then came to an empty room. The room was a bit strange. In the whole room, there was only a 2-dimensional stripe in the middle of the room. The two Xinglu disciples escorted Xiaoping'an through the metal arch that was more than 1 meter high. The moment he passed through the metal door, Xiaoping'an felt as if he had entered a rift in space again. His whole body felt weightless for a moment. Everything he had placed in the space warehouse shook and fell out of the space warehouse. It exploded and fell to the ground with a crash. Xiaoping'an didn't feel bad at all when those things were lost. It was just that the world's various methods of dealing with summoners opened Xiaoping'an's eyes. Is this guy selling weapons? Why does he have so many things on his body? Looking at the swords, guns, and ammunition that exploded on the ground, the two disciples of the criminal Lohal who were escorting Xiaoping'an were also stunned. The disciple fiddled with the things on the ground with his feet and curled his lips disdainfully. They are all ordinary things, not even magic weapons. Okay, these slutty summoners are all poor guys. Where can there be any good things? Let's put him in jail. The two people took Xiaoping'an out of the room, walked through the corridor, went to another place, and then entered the underground. When they came to the Tang family's prison, they threw Xiaoping'an into a huge cell. There were already more than 20 people in the cell. They were all kinds of people, standing lazily in the cell one by one, and wearing silver bracelets on their hands. The only light in the dungeon is a light transom at the top. Ha, here comes another unlucky guy. Some laughed. After throwing Xiaoping'an in, the cell door was closed. Xiaoping'an glanced around the room and found a place to sit against the wall. The cell looked clean and not dirty. It was much better than the water prison that Xiaoping'an expected, with big-headed maggots and dead rats floating around. Boy, where did you get arrested? A guy sitting next to Xiaoping'an who hadn't shaved for more than half a month asked Xiaoping'an. Xuanhuan. Xiaoping'an replied. Ah, Xuanhuan. Upon hearing that Xiaoping'an was captured from Xuanhuan, those in the cell suddenly became interested and almost all gathered around him. Tell me, what's going on in Xuanhuan now? Did Xuanhuan's void secret appear? Is there any strong person coming? The people who gathered around asked all kinds of questions. Xiaoping'an didn't hide anything and directly told what he saw. The Tang family is really defeated, ha ha ha. Someone slapped their thighs and laughed. I said that with the ability of the Tang family, how could it be possible to monopolize Xuanhuan's void secret treasure? Even if the Tang family could arrest us all, but when you meet a real master, you still have to be defeated. I wonder who the person who made the Tang family suffer is actually able to summon the dark dragon. At least a master above the Four Yang realm. By the way, how did you get in? Xiaoping'an also asked. Damn it, I heard that there was a void secret in Xuanhuan. I originally wanted to try my luck. Unexpectedly, I was caught by the Tang family's patrol team as soon as I arrived in Dawan City. A disheveled guy said bitterly. Me too. A group of people in the cell yelled. Looking at the group of people in the cell, Xiaoping'an secretly shook his head. If these guys went to Xuanhuan, they would definitely not have a share in the void secrets, and maybe they would be corpses now. Anyway, there was nothing in the cell. Xiaoping'an chatted with these people without saying a word, but he learned a lot of useful information from these people, and that information also allowed Xiaoping'an to understand the situation in the southern region of Jinyuezhu little by little. Have a more three-dimensional understanding. The Tang family has been rooted in the southern region of Jinyuezhu for hundreds of years, but it is only a small family and only owns one Dawan city. There are many large and small family forces in the southern region of Jinyu continent, and these large and small family forces are sandwiched between several huge forces. At the southern and southwest ends of the southern region of Jinyu continent, there are the Demonic Wolf Empire and the Demonic Wolf Clan. Chaos Demon Realm, and to the north and northwest of the southern region of Jinyu continent, are the divine kingdoms of the Dark God of War sect and the Moon God sect, the two most powerful human forces in Jinyu continent. A divine religion can have many divine kingdoms, but a divine kingdom can only have one divine religion. Divine religion is the influence left by the gods of this world in the world. When he heard about the dark god of war cult, Xiaoping's heart moved, because this dark god of war cult was his original target. The dark god of war cult was one of the largest human forces in Yuan. Relying on one person and dozens of people to find and destroy the Dark Tower is too weak. If you can master the power of the divine religion and complete this task on a large platform, it will be a different scene. At night, in the Tang family's secret room. The head of the Tang family and the 4 family elders are all here. The Tang family failed to fight for the void secret in Wansongjia Yuan. As several powerful figures in the Tang family, they naturally had to re-examine here afterwards. The result of the review was that every step of the Tang family started from the discovery of the void secret. They didn't do anything wrong. The only reason for the failure was that the Tang family was still too weak. Facing Guozhang Qianglong, they were just one step away and the Tang family's flesh was snatched away right under their noses. If you are not strong enough, you cannot blame others. And leaving the void secrets undisputed is not what a family should do. Fortunately, the Tang family's strength was basically not compromised this time. Only 2 family disciples were sacrificed, and several family disciples were injured. The elders who took action were slightly injured and will recover in a few days. The news about the person who robbed the Void Vault has been spread to the 2 major divine kingdoms in the north through their own network, and the Tang family can just ask jealous and capable masters to deal with him. This can be regarded as an indirect revenge for the Tang family. The matter has passed. Although the prodigal summoners who were captured and imprisoned in the criminal law hall were not very powerful, they knew many people. Those prodigal summoners formed gangs and had many connections. Killing them would probably make the Tang family full. Being criticized will leave the Tang family with the reputation of being violent, and will cause a lot of trouble for the Tang family's children who go out in the future. I'll give him a few days of detention and then let him go. Tang Xiao, the head of the Tang family, said in the end. Those wandering summoners are just little shrimps, they can't squeeze anything out of them, and they haven't done much harm. Killing them won't help, and will only cause some trouble if people criticize them. Therefore, the most appropriate way is to imprison them for a few days. Let go. What the head of the family said is true. The wandering summoner named Xiaoping and whom I asked Tang Long to capture from Wansongjia Yuan today, although his strength is not strong and cannot reach the Yang realm, he can cast the perfect Requiem banner. I also integrated space equipment. When I saw that person before, he seemed to have been affected by the soul-losing spell. Everything in his body had been robbed, and his clothes were all stripped off. He was stripping the dead man of his clothes and put them on. He took them, those belonging to dead people, feel sorry for them, and give them requiems. Those who can cast the perfect requiem flag must not be ordinary people. The people who use the soul-losing technique to rob his things probably know the origin of that person and dare not offend him. That's why he was spared his life. It would be really troublesome for such a person to die in the hands of our Tang family. Elder Lu said. Those who can cast the perfect level requiem flag and integrate it with space equipment must have an origin or family tradition. They take the dead person's things and return them to the dead person for requiem. This style is indeed like a descendant of a strict family tradition. Tang Xiao touched his beard and nodded lightly. Many children from big families will practice as wandering summoners when they grow up. Elder Lu is indeed cautious. After a few days of imprisonment, he asked the criminal law hall to release that person. Come on, so as not to make unnecessary enemies for the Tang family. Yes. Elder Lu and Tang Xiao were talking, but they didn't notice that another elder from the Tang family who was also coughing just now in the conference room lowered his eyes after listening to these words, with a strange color flashing in his eyes. Xiaoping'an was locked in the cell for half a month. Half a month later, Xiaoping'an was taken out of the cell and interrogated in the Tang family's criminal law hall because he had trespassed into the Tang family's territory. If a person is detained, he will be detained for half a month and given a slight punishment. The people from the Tang family's criminal law hall took out something and asked Xiaopingan to sign and confess what he had done, and then release Xiaopingan. The junk copper and iron that Xiaopingan picked up in the territory were all taken away from the Tang family. He didn't keep anything, he was very particular about his work, and returned everything to him. Walking out of the Tang family's castle alone, Xiaopingan raised his head, squinted at the sun in the sky, then sniffed his clothes that were already swollen and infested with lice, took one last look at the Tang family's castle, turned around and strode towards walk to the pawn shop in the city. It's just that, just after walking a few streets, Xiaopingan felt a chill in his heart, and the hairs on his neck exploded. The sun was shining brightly above his head, and the streets were bustling with people. Several large grasshoppers jumped in front of him. People around him saw that Xiaopingan was a little unkempt, and everyone avoided them in disgust. Xiaopingan knew that he was being targeted. Because he has remote sensing ability, his perception is also extremely sharp. He will feel it when someone is watching him. The hair on his neck exploded. It was because the person staring at him was far stronger than him and had bad intentions towards him. Xiaopingan walked on the street as usual, but in his heart, various thoughts were already spinning rapidly. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 164. Sir, are you really going to cheat on these things? The shopkeeper in the pawn shop looked at Xiaopingan through the pawn window, his eyes were like looking at a robber. Also, no normal person can take out such a lot of things at once. Those things look like they belong to people who murder and rob goods, especially those gold headdresses, which look like they came from the wrong way. After Xiaopingan took out the swords, guns, bullets, and gold headdresses from his space warehouse, the two security guards from the pawn shop appeared silently in the business hall, staring at Xiaopingan with 4 eyes. One of the security guards had obvious fluctuations in divine power, which meant to tell Brother Xiaopingan, "Don't have any thoughts, I am also a member of China Merchants Bank. There is probably no such thing as gun control in Dawan City." Xiaopingan just walked along and saw several gun stores on the road. In those stores, various lengths of gunpowder, firearms and ammunition were sold. There are also many stores selling cold weapons. There are many pedestrians on the street carrying knives and guns. Yes, all are pawned, Xiaopingan said directly. "Shopkeeper, please give me a price. These swords and pistols are a bit worn, and the condition is not very good. These gold headdresses can only be used by summoners. I have to dissolve them again. How about this, just 46 gold coins?" The shopkeeper stared at Xia with his small eyes. Pingan had already planned in his heart that if Xiaopingan negotiated the price, he could still talk and add 2 more gold coins. "Okay, then 46 gold coins," Xiaopingan said directly without bothering to care. There are several types of human currencies in this world. One is gold coins, the other is silver coins, and the third is copper coins. These 3 currencies are called agreement currencies. They are the unified currency system and agreements made by various banks in this world. That is, the quality and weight of each of these 3 currencies are exactly the same. Different forces have different styles, but the patterns of the currencies are different, and the weight and color are exactly the same, which facilitates trade. The shopkeeper took out the money from behind the counter and counted 46 gold coins to Xiaopingan. Xiaopingan weighed it and found that each gold coin weighed about 50 grams and was heavy. Some gold coins had images of the Tang family's castle and Dawan city on them, and some gold coins had a skull with 2 full moons on its head. The latter is the image of a seated woman, and the latter is the image of the moon god. Reaching out and sweeping the gold coins, Xiaopingan swept all the gold coins into his space equipment. Then Xiaopingan left the pawn shop directly. As soon as he walked outside, the feeling of being stared at appeared again, like a light on his back. Xiaopingan remained calm, took the money, and continued to the next place. This time Xiaopingan went to a store selling clothes. Just on the street, the puppet models in the street windows are wearing various clothes, and a pair of scissors is hanging on the signboard. These are the ready-to-wear stores here. Xiaopingan chose a large-scale ready-made clothing store, went in and browsed around, and bought a lot of clothes in one go. After coming out of the ready-made clothing store, Xiaopingan went to a bathhouse in the city. When he came out of the bathhouse, it was time. It was already noon, and Xiaopingan was completely renewed from head to toe, and he was full of energy. Afterwards, Xiaopingan went to a restaurant in the city, had a lunch, and went straight to the train station in Dawan City. At the train station, he bought a train that would leave Dawan City recently. Without saying a word, I got on the train at the station, squeezed into the crowded train carriage, took the train, and left Dawan City. After getting on the train, the feeling of being watched on my back disappeared for a moment, but it didn't take long for that feeling to come back again. Xiaopingan was in the car, staring at the people who got on the bus. The people who got on the bus were all kinds of men and women. He couldn't tell who was staring at him. This situation only means one thing, that is, the strength of the person staring at you is completely beyond your imagination. Even if he stares at you, you won't be able to notice it. The train slowly left the platform and churned toward the north. The train was speeding on the rails, and its speed gradually reached more than 80 kilometers per hour. The destination of this train is the divine kingdom of the moon god sect in the north. Along the way, it will pass through the family territories and cities of more than 10 families. It starts from Dawan City to the divine kingdom of the moon god sect in the north, passing through most of the entire southern region of Jinyu continent. It will take more than 20 days. Checking the tickets, checking the tickets. The conductor on the car began to check the tickets. After checking the tickets, vendors selling tea, melon seeds, and cigarettes came and hawked along the carriages. Xiaopingan spent a silver coin and bought a bowl of tea. The tea on this train is not cheap, but once you buy it, you can refill it at any time without paying for it. If you drink too much tea, you will naturally have 3 emergencies. There are toilets on the train. Before it got dark, Xiaopingan went to the toilet twice, and came back after 2 or 3 minutes each time. The train was running with a bang, and the sky was getting dark before I knew it. Outside the train, there are endless wilderness and hills. After having dinner in the restaurant on the train, he returned to his seat again. After sitting for a while, Xiaopingan got up again and went to the toilet. This time, as soon as he entered the train toilet, Xiaopingan closed the toilet door and opened the toilet window. He was like a loach, slipping out of the window of the speeding train, and his whole body was like a loach. He jumped out of the train, fell into the wilderness outside, and suddenly lay down in the grass about half a person's height outside the train track. As soon as the train left, Xiaopingan stood up and started running towards the mountains in the distance, disappearing into the darkness in the blink of an eye. 5 minutes later, a thin figure wearing a black robe and a ferocious bull-headed mask appeared at the place where Xiaopingan jumped off the train. He let out a low roar and the eyes behind the mask were fierce. The light flashed, and he immediately chased Xiaopingan in the direction where he disappeared, his body like lightning. The night is getting darker and darker. A few hours later, in a valley in the endless wilderness, the man wearing a black robe and a mask with a bull's head and a ghost face finally discovered Xiaopingan's fleeing figure. "Boy, you are cunning enough to find me staring at you to see where you are running." A figure in black robes fell directly from the sky, with a low voice like a ghost's roar, blocking Xiaopingan, and pointed at Xiaopingan. A line of black smoke, like a rope, flew towards Xiaopingan. Xiaoping, who was running, calmed down and smiled slightly at the figure in black robe, not feeling nervous at all. Just when the figure in black robe felt slightly strange, the black smoke-like rope touched Xiaopingan, and Xiaopingan's figure shook and then turned into a line of smoke and dispersed. Illusion, beacon fire plays on the princes. The figure in the black robe suddenly roared. He didn't expect that after chasing him for most of the night, he was actually tricked by a kid. This is so embarrassing. The key is that for such a long time, I was distracted by the illusion, and the boy no longer knew where to escape. The figure in black robes flew into the air and glanced around. Under the night, the wilderness is vast and there are hills everywhere, and no one can be found anywhere. Just when the figure of Xiaopinggan's illusion was shattered, Xiaopinggan, who was hiding in a tree hole in a forest 100 miles away, suddenly opened his eyes, and a look of horror flashed in his eyes. There is some kind of magical connection between the summoner who casts the spell and the illusion of the princes. Xiaopinggan can not only control the direction of the illusory figure's running movements, but he can also fully feel what the illusion figure sees. Smell. Although the man in black robes and a mask with a bull's head who was staring at him and chasing him did not show his face, looking at that man's figure and listening to his voice, Xiaopinggan suddenly remembered the man in black robes from the Tang family of elders. Why would that Tang family elder want to harm him? He only had a relationship with him once, and he had no other quarrels or grudges. Xiaopinggan didn't know the reason behind this, but he also knew that if a wolf eats a sheep, it does not require the sheep's consent and understanding. This is how everything in this world is. Under the protection of the Green Guardian barrier, Xiaopinggan hid in the tree hole for 5 days. After 5 days, when he was sure that the elder of the Tang family had left, Xiaopinggan emerged from the tree hole and identified. He turned around and ran towards the north. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 165. 3 months later, Jinyu, the capital of the Great Shang Kingdom, arrived in Beijing. A slanting wind and drizzle enveloped the upper capital, causing the peach blossoms along the Qinan River 800 miles away to scatter into the river, almost dyeing the water pink. The Qinan River goes all the way east for 800 miles, bypassing the north of Shangjing City like a moat, and then goes straight to the sea. More than 300 miles to the east of Shangjing City is the sea. There is also the Donggang district of Shangjing City. The entire city, more than half of the various goods, money, and grain transported from the southern part of the Shang dynasty to Shangjing City were transported by sea to Donggang and disembarked. Needless to say, there is no need to mention the prosperity of Shangjing City Donggang. On Pier 7 of Donggang, a giant cruise ship with 3 huge chimneys and a length of nearly 200 meters slowly docked amidst the sound of its whistle. As the huge cruise ship docked, the passengers who had been on the cruise ship for more than half a month braved the drizzle and got off the ship one after another carrying large and small bags. Shangjing is a dream destination for many people. This is the capital of the Great Shang Kingdom and the seat of the Holy See of the Dark God of War in Jinyu Continent. This is the most prosperous and largest city in Jinyu Continent with a permanent population of over 10 million. It seems that as long as a person comes here, he will be able to enjoy the countless wealth here. Reputation, status, and prosperity are all related to those big figures who influence the pattern of all nations. In the city of Shangjing, countless people come here every day to pan for gold, and countless people hope to soar into the sky and become a blockbuster here. My dear friend Ping'an, the headquarters of the Divine Advocates Adjudication Army is located at Fenjiao Mountain in the north of Shangjing City. It's still a long way from here to Fenjiao Mountain. I'm here to wish you a future adjudicator and great achievements in Shangjing City. My little friend, if you have time in the future, please come to Wanli Bookstore on Jingcheng East Street and meet me for tea and chess. On the cruise ship, a well-dressed old man wearing a top hat and gold-rimmed glasses, holding a cane in his hand, was saying goodbye to Xiaopinggan. This old man was Xiaopinggan's roommate in the cabin on the cruise ship. Xiaopinggan lived in a 2-person ordinary cabin on the cruise ship, and this old man was another tenant in the cabin. The old man's surname is Jing Yuxing. He is a native of Shangjing City. He opened a small bookstore in Shangjing City. Some time ago, the old man went to Jinzhou to visit friends. When he came back, he took this cruise ship and happened to meet Xia. Stay in one room safely. These days on the cruise ship, Xia Pingan played chess and chatted when the old man was bored. After more than half a month, they got along very well. Thank you, Mr. Zheng. When I settle down, I will find time to play chess and drink tea with Mr. Zheng. Xia Pingan said to the old man with a smile. In Xia Pingan's impression, although this old man opened a bookstore, he was well-spoken and well-informed. After half a month, Xia Pingan just chatted with this old man and gained a lot. Ha ha ha, okay, then it's settled. Mr. Jing smiled, his face became a little more serious, and he said earnestly, before we leave, I have one more thing to say to my little friend. This is the capital of Jinyu continent. The most prosperous place is also the most dangerous place. My friend is here for the first time. Even if you have ambitions, you should be careful in everything. Do you know why the locals in Shangjing City never eat the food from Chenan River? River fish. Why? Mr. Jing pointed to the Chenan River not far away and sighed, the Chenan River will be cleaned every more than 10 years. Every time it is cleaned, no one knows how many ships' bones are cleared out. Those bones are not tied to iron bodies. The hands and feet are tied with chains, the head is missing, the bones are broken, the tendons are broken, and the bones are black. Who among the locals will eat the fish coming out of the river? Thank you, Mr. Jing, for telling me. I will be careful, Xia Pingan said seriously. That's it, let's say goodbye. Mr. Jing and Xia Pingan said goodbye. They took out a black oilcloth umbrella from their suitcase, opened the umbrella, carried the suitcase, and walked down the stairs on the deck to get off the ship and disappeared below. Among the vast crowd, Mr. Jing is not young, but his body is quite strong and does not look old at all. He is holding a box in his hand and his back is straight. Watching Mr. Jing leave, Xia Pingan also carried his suitcase, mixed in with the crowd, and got off the boat. The suitcase was bought by Xia Pingan before. It was a brown cowhide suitcase. It was quite good looking. People who travel long distances do not take a suitcase with them. It would be too conspicuous when walking in the crowd. Many people would look at it curiously. A suitcase would look much more ordinary. A little drizzle fell on Xia Pingan's face, which was slightly cool. Xia Pingan walked towards the pier among the crowd. In a daze, he felt like he was back in the days when he drifted north. It's so similar. In my previous life, I drifted north for the purpose of studying and getting ahead, but this time I came to Beijing for the same purpose. Shangjing City of the Great Shang Kingdom is a gathering place for Jinyues whose resources, information, power, and experts. At the same time, it is also the largest country in Jinyues Hu. Library and National Archives. For a summoner, the fastest place to practice is not in the mountains and forests, but in the bustling city in front of you. As long as you can get ahead in the city, the training resources you can obtain are absolutely unmatched by other places. At the same time, it is also the most likely place to find clues to the Dark Tower. The protective armed force of the Dark God of War is called the Judgment Army. Those who can join the Judgment Army must be summoners, and the Judgment Army recruits externally. Summoners who are not from the Great Zhou Kingdom, as long as they are before the Yang realm, can come here to try. See if you can join the Judgment Army. The summoners who join the Judgment Army are all the best of the best. Once they join the Judgment Army, they become a part of the judgment of the Dark God of War, and that means they have found the organization. I just heard that it is very difficult to join the Judgment Army and the conditions are strict. When the Judgment Army selects summoners, they almost always choose one from 100, the best from the best, and the best from the best. Xia Pingan left the dock with the crowd of people disembarking. After the bustling crowd walked out of the dock, they came to the street outside the dock. On the streets here, rows of rickshaws were parked on the side of the road. Those rickshaws were almost identical to rickshaws. When they saw people pouring out, the rickshaw drivers ran over and started picking up the customers. In addition to rickshaws, Xiaopinggan saw four-wheeled carriages, cars, and trams on the streets of the city. The big grasshoppers I saw in Dawan city before were nowhere to be seen here. When the rickshaw pullers came over, people from various dental shops waiting outside the pier exit were also holding signs recruiting various workers, including nannies, maids, boys, various apprentices, and nurses. The hospital bodyguards have everything you need. Seeing the pretty young woman walking out of the exit carrying something, a large number of dental shop employees holding signs recruiting maids and nannies rushed over and started promising various conditions. Some beggars and newspaper sellers also came over. There was some confusion at the exit. The scene in front of me is somewhat similar to the demon capital in the old society. Xiaopinggan, who was crowded in the crowd, had just taken a few steps when he felt two chopsticks quickly reaching into his pocket from the side. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 166. Kungshu.com, the fastest update to the latest chapter of Golden Summoner. Xiaopinggan grabbed it out and caught the wrist of one hand. He turned around and looked over, only to see a boy of 14 or 15 years old with a grey felt hat on his head, clothes that were not old and stained with raindrops, and a thin face, staring at him with a fierce look in his eyes. A hint of fear. The two chopsticks the young man was holding had fallen to the ground. Damn it, what are you doing? Let go. Not only was the boy not afraid, but he said fiercely with a threatening tone. Xiaopinggan put a little force on his hand, and a look of pain appeared on the young man's face, but there was also a hint of cunning hidden in the pain. Ah! The boy yelled, with a strong element of performance, and then he suddenly fell to the ground full of sewage, twitching all over. Those people who had just arrived in Beijing were frightened and dispersed. At the same time, more than 10 people gathered around them. Those 10 people were all men in their teens and 20s. Some of them were wearing felt hats, some people were wearing the yellow vests used to help people carry luggage outside the port. They immediately surrounded Xiaopinggan, and everyone stared at Xiaopinggan with fierce eyes. Many people put their hands in their pockets. The pocket was bulging, and it looked like it contained sharp objects. Shoppy, what's wrong with you? A flat-faced man in his 20s with small eyes and eyebrows so pale that they couldn't be seen walked out from the crowd and asked loudly and gruffly. Brother Hong, I just came over to ask him if he wanted to salute, but I didn't expect him to hit me. Ouch, ouch, it hurts so much. The boy who fell to the ground screamed and twitched on the ground again as if he were performing. Got up. Friends, a group of us brothers are just working as coolies here to earn a living and earn some hard money by helping people with gifts. Is it too much for you to bully a child like this? The young man named Brother Hong looked at him coldly. Xiaopinggan took 2 steps closer and said, forget it if you don't want our service. Why are you beating someone? That's right, why did you hit someone? Damn it, if you dare to bully us, I'll stab you to death. Beat him to death, beat him to death. The people around him gathered around and stared at Xiaopinggan fiercely. Others were making noises and threats. Several people were staring at the suitcase Xiaopinggan was carrying. Xiaopinggan lowered his head and looked at the shoppy who fell on the ground. He saw that while the shoppy was twitching, he had already kicked the 2 wooden chopsticks that had just fallen on the ground into the crowd next to him. And the people in the crowd next to you kicked him. I kicked the 2 wooden chopsticks apart in the blink of an eye and disappeared. This is a group crime with a clear division of labor. Once the theft is not discovered, they will threaten to blackmail the person. These people in front of them are already very skilled at this trick. As the saying goes, you can tell the whole story by looking at a small part. Such a group is blocking the port area of Shangjing City to commit crimes, but there is no police to control it. The public security and environment faced by the middle and lower class people in Shangjing City are probably worse than they imagined. Seeing that Xiaoping'an didn't speak and just looked around, those who gathered around suddenly became bolder. Brother Hong and a few people in the crowd winked, and the surrounding crowd gathered around in a commotion. Beat him! Someone in the crowd encouraged. In the chaos, the crowd gathered around to block the eyes of people outside. Several hands grabbed Xiaoping'an's luggage compartment with sharp blades in their hands. Others grabbed Xiaoping'an directly. As if searching Xiaoping'an, some hands turned into fists, and some had half a brick in their hands, and a wooden stick hit Xiaoping'an on the head and body. Some were slightly younger. The young man slipped through the crowd and wanted to hold Xiaoping'an's hand. Shoppy, who was twitching on the ground, stopped twitching now. With a vicious smile, he wanted to hug Xiaoping'an's legs. The scene in front of me was like a pack of hyenas attacking a lion. Ordinary people would probably have difficulty coping in this situation, apart from being beaten and robbed. However, those people may be able to cooperate as closely as hyenas, and Xiaoping'an is not as easy to deal with as a lion. There was no extra expression on Xiaoping'an's face, he just picked up his suitcase and swung it around. The suitcase knocks open fists, bricks, sticks, hands, bodies. The people who came around rolled over and fell to the ground one by one. Brother Hong was hit on the head by the suitcase, and he became dizzy and flew 2 meters away. Ouch, ouch, I hit someone, I hit someone. The people shouted together. Seeing that Xiaoping'an was so brave and his hands were surprisingly strong, and he was no soft-legged shrimp that could be kneaded by others, those who fell on the ground did not dare to rush over again for a while. Beep, beep. A policeman wearing a black uniform and holding a baton, who had been waiting for a long time, finally appeared when those people woke him up. What are you doing, what are you doing, who hit someone? The policeman was fat and walked over with a shudder. As soon as he came over, he asked loudly with a cold face. Officer, he hit someone. Brother Hong, who fell on the ground, and a group of people who were screaming all pointed at Xiaoping'an. Officer, they are stealing, robbing, and beating people here. Do you care about them? Xiaoping'an said to the policeman. I didn't see what you said. They said you beat someone, and so many people saw it. The policeman walked directly towards Xiaoping'an, with a tigerish face and a baton in his hand. Snapping sound. The bricks and sticks on the ground, and the blades hidden on their bodies, are evidence. You will know it once you search them. Listening to what Xiaoping'an said, the policeman's face became even colder. He stared at Xiaoping'an with a pair of pea-filled eyes and scolded him directly. The police still need you to teach them when handling cases. If you have any questions, come to the police station with me, go talk. As he spoke, the policeman took out the handcuffs from his waist and was about to torture Xiaoping'an. Xiaoping'an finally understood why these gangs of stealing and extorting people were so rampant in the dock area. It turned out that they had protective umbrellas. When he saw the police taking out handcuffs to torture him, he took a step back and avoided them all at once. Opened. The policeman's face changed slightly. Damn it, you still dare to arrest me? Do you know who I am? Xiaoping'an blinked and suddenly asked the policeman. The policeman was stunned for a moment. Who are you? I won't tell you. Xiaoping'an smiled slightly. The policeman's face changed, and he grabbed Xiaoping'an again. Xiaoping'an's move was like lightning, and he grabbed the handcuffs from the policeman's hand. At the same time, he grabbed the policeman's wrist. The policeman staggered. Xiaoping'an was led involuntarily to the light pole of a nearby street lamp. Xiaoping'an took action too quickly, and there were 2 clicks. The policeman was still confused and did not react. His hands were already holding the light pole, and Xiaoping'an was roasting him. Not only that, Xiaoping'an also ripped off the whistle around his neck and the handcuff key on his belt. How dare you resist arrest? Let me go, "Let me go," the policeman screamed. His voice was stern and he was extremely embarrassed. The policeman was actually being handcuffed by a man in such a public place, and he was still hugging him here. It's so embarrassing to touch a light pole. It's because of rubbish police officers like you that these people dare to commit crimes here. Xiaoping'an waved his hand and threw the police whistle and handcuff keys in his hand into the gap in the sewer nearby. "Someone come quickly, someone come quickly," the policeman shouted. Before anyone could surround him, Xiaoping'an had already picked up his suitcase and ran away. In the blink of an eye, he rushed hundreds of meters in the drizzle, turned a corner, and disappeared from everyone's sight. Brother Hong and the others who fell on the ground didn't react, and they didn't expect that Xiaoping'an could actually run. When they got up one by one, they had just taken a few steps to catch up, and they could no longer see the figure. "You bastards, don't you have any brains? Quickly find the key and open my handcuffs," the policeman who was handcuffed to the street light pole shouted angrily. Brother Hong and the others hurriedly turned around again and hurriedly opened the manhole cover of the sewer, trying to salvage the key. However, it rained today, and the water flow in the sewer was a bit fast. The key whistle that Xiaoping'an threw into the sewer was caught by the water. As soon as he rushed, he could no longer see it. Those people watching at the pier exit seemed to be watching a funny farce. The policeman was being tortured, and a group of gangsters were rescuing the policeman. The police and the people are really like a family. Not far away, a black four-wheel carriage was parked on the roadside. In the back row of the carriage, Mr. Jing watched what was happening there through the dark glass window. He waited until he saw Xiaoping'an's figure disappearing around the corner of the street, and then Mr. Jing, who was sitting in the carriage, smiled slightly, pulled up the curtains of the carriage window, and tapped a wooden board in the carriage with his cane. "Let's go. Drive." The driver wearing a raincoat outside the carriage shook the reins lightly, and the black four-wheeled carriage started to move. Xiaoping'an was very fast. He turned the corner and saw that no one was chasing him. Xiaoping'an directly stopped a four-wheel carriage carrying passengers that had just got off. The four-wheeled carriages used to carry passengers in the capital city. The color of the lights on the front of the carriages is yellow, which is very easy to identify. The coachmen were wearing raincoats, ponchos, and hats, just like fishermen sitting alone on the cold river, sitting in front of the car, holding the reins. The headquarters of the Judgment Army. Although the road from Donggang to the main camp of the Judgment Army in the north is easy, the distance is more than 500 miles, and the carriage will take almost a day to travel. Moreover, the weather was bad today and the journey was long. Just as the driver was about to refuse, Xiaoping'an had already thrown a gold coin over. After taking the gold coins, the driver quickly jumped out of the car to get Xiaoping'an's luggage. The carriage started running briskly in the drizzle. Xiaoping'an touched himself. The money he got from Dawan City came all the way here, and in the end there were only 2 gold coins and a few silver coins left. In the misty rain and fog outside, tall and gorgeous buildings in the port area can be seen everywhere on the roadside, with signs of various trading houses, banks, and companies hanging everywhere. There are all kinds of people in the upper capital city, from 3 religions and 9 schools. In order to survive and compete for fame and wealth, countless people are flopping, struggling, climbing, devouring, and biting in the city. This upper capital city is not a kind place. However, Xiaoping'an likes this place very much. It is precisely because this is not a good place that he has the opportunity. The real opportunities are hidden in the chaos and conflicts. Go to Beijing, here I come. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 167. In the morning, Xiaoping'an left Donggang. When the carriage took him to the Judgment Army's camp, it was completely dark. The driver and the horse pulling the cart were exhausted after running for a day. During the day on the road, the coachman also rested the horses twice in the stable where the carriage was rested, and fed them water and fodder. The horse pulling the cart was wet all over, with its head lowered and already weak. The driver was also shivering in the cold night wind. He opened the door for Xiaopingan and said carefully with a smile, "Sir, the chief of the Judgment Army. The camp is right in front, just follow this road for a while and you'll be there. Please forgive me, sir, that place is heavily guarded. I really don't dare to go there, so I can just ask you, sir, to walk over there. Okay, thank you for your hard work. I still need 35 silver coins from you, sir." The coachman asked tentatively. After all, Xiaopingan gave him too much money. Even if Xiaopingan hired him for a day and spent all his money, he would not be able to get a single gold coin anyway. This money is more than enough to hire him for 4 or 5 days. No need to look for it, I'll reward you more. Xiaopingan said. Thank you, sir, thank you, sir. The coachman took a deep breath with a smile on his face, thanking him deeply, then turned the car around and drove back again. There are still clouds in the sky, and almost no starlight can be seen. Only behind a thick layer of clouds, the shadows of 2 moons can be seen. The gas lamps on the road were already on, illuminating the puddles of water on the ground. There were not many pedestrians, cars, and horses around, and everyone was in a hurry, as if they didn't dare to stay here longer. The main camp of the Judgment Army is close to a large mountain to the north of Shangjing City. This mountain is called Pingshan. Pingshan in the darkness is like a giant beast lurking in the darkness, full of frightening aura. Xiaopingan did not go to the Judgment Army's camp. It was late at night. The Judgment Army's camp would not be waiting for him. People need to rest, not to mention it is so late. Xiaopingan walked on the street for a while, found a hotel, and asked for a room to stay for one night. He waited until the next morning before heading to the Arbitration Army's camp. The next day, the weather cleared up a bit and there was no more drizzle. After having breakfast in the hotel, he checked out of the room and threw the suitcase into his space warehouse. Xiaopingan was in high spirits, wearing a black robe, and headed for the Judgment Army's camp. The gate of the Arbitrary Army's barracks is a majestic, huge granite gatehouse more than 100 meters long, standing in front of it like a city gate. The gate in the middle of the gatehouse is open, and there are 2 rows of sentries from the Great Shang Kingdom wearing dark red military uniforms and carrying live ammunition. Standing at the gate intently, Xiaopingan came not too early. When he arrived, more than 200 people were already waiting here. All the people waiting here are in their 20s to 30s, with sharp eyes and calm breaths. They have different descriptions, including men and women. Xiaopingan can tell at a glance that these people are all Yang Summoner under the circumstances. There was a sign hanging on the side door next to the main entrance that said Judgment Army Recruitment. Everyone was waiting there. Xiaopingan was also behind the crowd, waiting patiently. Every once in a while, a new summoner arrives. After waiting for an hour, more than 300 summoners gathered here. "Brother, are you also coming to join the Judgment Army?" While Xiaopingan was waiting, a newcomer came to Xiaopingan and talked to Xiaopingan. When strangers get to know each other, they often start with nonsense. Xiaopingan glanced at the person who was talking to him. The person was in his 20s, with a gentle appearance, a nose and eyes, and his clothes were not conspicuous. He looked somewhat approachable. Of course, this was just a look. "Yes, I'm here to join the Judgment Army, are you too, brother?" Xiaopingan also followed up with a nonsense sentence. "Yes, my name is Chu Yuqian, what do you call me brother?" "My name is Xiaopingan." "Brother, are you from the Great Shang Kingdom?" "No, I have been wandering around various countries. I was in the southern region before." "Where are you, brother?" "Ha ha ha, like brother, I am also a wandering summoner." Chu Yuqian sighed and looked at the tall camp tower of the Judgment Army in front of him with hopeful eyes, The wandering summoner's life is not easy. Ah, it seems free, but it is too difficult to find some precious resources. Brother, you are also a summoner, so you must know it deeply. I will soon reach the Yang realm. Once I break through, I will need the baptism of the divine spring of the Yang realm. It's really hard to get the divine spring in the Yang realm outside. If you can join the Judgment Army, after arriving in the Yang realm, the Judgment Army will provide the divine spring in the Yang realm for free. Many people who come here have the same wish as me. The purpose is... well, that's what I think too. After joining the Judgment Army, I heard that as long as you perform well in the Judgment Army, there will be no shortage of training resources such as boundary beads, magic weapons, and divine springs in the Judgment Army. Xiaopinggan and Chuyukin chatting casually. Of course, it's just that it's not easy to join the adjudication army. I heard that the screening is very strict. It would be good for us people to be selected into 7 or 8 today. By the way, brother, you look like you just came to Beijing. Brother, do you have? I haven't thought about it. What are your plans if you lose? Chuyukin seemed very enthusiastic and started chatting with Xiaopinggan. I haven't thought about this yet. If I lose the election, I will first find a job in Shangjing City and then settle down. Summoners are also human beings. They need food, clothing, housing, and transportation, as well as training resources. These things all require money, especially in Shangjing City. Unless the family has a deep background, otherwise, the summoner will also need money. Only by working as an officer can you have a place in the capital city. Haha, yes, it's just as I thought. In fact, it's not difficult for wandering summoners like us to find a job in Shangjing City of the Great Shang Kingdom. A friend of mine failed to join the Judgment Army before. I went to work as a nursing home for a wealthy family, and the treatment was pretty good. I also have a friend who became a bounty hunter, and settled down here. Later, I got a divine spring, and now I have cultivated to the Yang realm. If I lose, I'll try to work as a bounty hunter too. If Xiangtai wants to go, I can introduce my friend to you, Xiangtai. Thank you. You're welcome, everyone should help each other out when they are out. The two people were chatting, and 2 people came out of the side door. One of them was in his 20s, with an arrogant look on his face, and the other was in his 30s, and he looked much calmer. Both of them were wearing the uniforms of the Judgment Army, dark red armor, double-breasted black robes, a dark red brass belt more than a hand wide around their waists, and high black leather boots at their feet. The trouser legs are tucked into leather shoes, which looks cool and stylish. On the shoulders of those 2 people's robes, there are also the red background epaulets of the Judgment Army. The epaulets have the symbol of the Dark War God's throne of thorns. The epaulet of the man in his 20s has a star on it, and the other man's epaulet has 2 stars. Star. The one with 1 star is the 1 sun summoner in the Judgment Army, and the one with 2 stars is the 2 sun summoner. If it is a summoner with 4 sun realm or above, the base of the epaulet will be gold, and there will be silver crossed scepters and flame patterns. In the Judgment Army, strength is military rank, but I don't know what their professional and religious titles are. Chuyukin licked his lips and said to Xiaopinggan in an envious tone, if you can wear the clothes of the Judgment Army, you will be very popular. You can almost walk sideways in the entire kingdom of the Dark God of War already. Xiaopinggan smiled. The Judgment Army is a violent machine of the Dark God of War, so people in the Judgment Army generally have 3 ranks, which is a little complicated to say. Military ranks represent strength, and job titles represent specific positions. This is easy to understand. For example, Second Lieutenant Platoon Leader, Second Lieutenant it is a military rank, and Platoon Leader is a job title, but in addition, the Judgment Army also has a religious rank, which represents that person's status within the Dark War God cult. The most common identities within the church are congregants, then priests, then deacons, priests, bishops, etc. In the kingdom of the dark god of war, as well as in the kingdoms of other divine religions, a person with a higher religious title is truly great. A higher religious title can crush people to death. As soon as the two people walked out of the side door, the scene became quiet for an instant, and everyone's eyes were on those two people. If you want to join the Judgment Army, the first rule in the Judgment Army that you must abide by now is to shut up. I don't care what you did before, what your identity and experience were. From now on, anyone who wants to speak and express their opinions, everyone has to raise their hands, and you are not allowed to speak unless you get permission. Do you understand? The arrogant young man in his 20s said directly to everyone. Everyone nodded, but no one spoke. Seeing everyone nodding, the young man continued, people will die in the selection of the Judgment Army. If you are afraid of death, please don't come in and waste everyone's time. If you are not afraid of death, you can come here to get a license and participate in the selection. The people in front started to line up to receive the license plate number, and those who received the license plate number took the license plate and stood aside. The man in his 30s with 2 stars on his epaulette remained silent. He just put his hands behind his back and stared indifferently at the people in front of him who were queuing up to receive their license plates. After the people in front received more than 40 license plates, the man in his 30s finally took action. He stretched out his hand and grabbed a person who had just come to the front of the line. He grabbed the person's collar and threw that person out of the 30-year-old in a hurry. Duomi fell heavily to the ground and vomited blood. You came to participate in the selection of the Judgment Army 4 years ago and failed. Today, you have grown a beard and changed your hairstyle, so you want to come and get through. The selection of the Judgment Army only has one chance in a lifetime. If you dare to come and fool around next time, you will not be spared. Get out, the man in his 30s yelled. The man he threw out didn't dare to say a word. He got up from the ground and walked away in despair. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 168. Xiaopingan was also surprised when he saw someone being thrown out. In 4 years, a person has to see so many unfamiliar faces. That man met someone 4 years ago and still remembers it today. This memory is too terrifying, as if he has awakened some kind of ability to recognize. Others have the same abilities. Soon, it was Xiaopingan's turn. Xiaopingan received a plaque, and Chuyukinyu, who was behind Xiaopingan, received a plaque. Xiaopingan discovered that the numbers on the number plates were random and not issued in order. The number plate he received had the number 68 written on the front, while Chuyukin was behind him and the number plate he received was the number 113. Within a few minutes, everyone had received a number plate. A total of 326 people came to participate in the selection today. Those who have obtained the license plate can follow me in, the arrogant young man in his 20s said to everyone, and then led 326 people into the adjudication army's camp through the side door. Entering the camp, there is a wide road inside, with pines and cypresses planted on both sides of the road. Just after entering, less than 100 meters away, there is a huge school ground. There are hundreds of numbered squares on the ground on the school field. Each square is more than 30 square meters, the size of a ring. Okay, everyone, look at the number plates in your hands, follow the numbers on the number plates, and enter the arena seats in the venue. The arrogant young man in his 20s spoke loudly. Everyone entered the squares on the field individually. Now, those with even-numbered numbers can enter the odd-numbered arena with one smaller number than themselves, those with the number 2 can enter the 1, and those with the 3 can enter the 2. Bit. Xiaopingan walked to the 67th stage. On the 67th stage was a sturdy summoner in his 30s. He was staring at Xiaopingan with a solemn expression and took a deep breath. Xiaopingan had already guessed what was going to happen next. Anyone with a clear mind can guess what will happen next. The first level of the Judgment Army selection test is everyone's unarmed fighting ability. The fighting venue is in the middle of the ring. If you are knocked down and cannot get up again, if you are knocked out of the yellow line area of the ring, or step on the area outside the yellow line, or the one who voluntarily admits defeat will be eliminated. If two people fall out of the ring together, they will be eliminated together. If both parties are in the ring at the end of the game, two people will be eliminated at the same time. In the end, those who cannot stand up on their own will also be eliminated. Elimination: unarmed combat cannot use any weapons, hidden weapons, poisons, summoning spells and special awakening abilities. Once discovered, you will be eliminated. We hope that everyone will stop it, but fighting in the ring will inevitably lead to death and injury. Everyone is responsible for their own life and death. The young man in his 20s said, letting everyone hear, "We can start now." As soon as he finished speaking, the people in the ring started to move their hands. Among the 163 ring positions in the venue, some summoners were unexpected and struck quickly. Almost from the beginning, the summoners in the same ring were kicked out of the ring position without even saying a word, and they won an instant victory. And many summoners in the arena began to fight, which was extremely fierce. Xiaopingyan did not rush to take action, but hugged his fists at the summoner in front of him who was facing a formidable enemy, and said apologetically, "This brother, I'm offended." The summoner didn't rush over in a hurry, and also hugged Xiaopingyan. "It's not an offense today. Everyone wants to join the Judgment Army, so let's do it according to our abilities. Please. Please." Xiaopingyan didn't know the details of the other party, and he didn't dare to be careless. He immediately opened up his posture, and the same was true for the person opposite. The two sides turned around half a circle in the ring, and the person opposite roared and rushed towards Xiaopingyan, punching Xiaopingyan sharply and fiercely in the chest. Xiaopingyan didn't give in, and directly used one of the 7 tiger moves to go down the mountain, use his fist as a sword, and hit him with a punch. Xiaopingyan punched, and there was a sound of tiger roaring in the wind, which immediately attracted the attention of people outside the field. The two fists collided without any tricks. Xiaopingyan's figure remained motionless, but the man's figure took 3 steps back in succession, and his face changed slightly. After a punch, Xiaopingyan already knew in his heart that although the person opposite him was not weak in skill, he was no match for him. In terms of speed, strength, reaction, and moves, he was all inferior to him. The man seemed to feel this, but he did not give up. Instead, he worked harder, roared, and rushed over again. After fighting that person for more than 10 moves, Xiaopingyan glanced at the man with one move. In the dazzling shadows of fists and palms, his palms fell on the man's chest, knocking the man directly out of the 67th ring. Bit. After the man was kicked out of the ring, his body was shaken and his energy and blood were sluggish. He got up in one fell swoop. He also knew that Xiaopingyan was showing mercy. He had no time to defend himself just now, and Xiaopingyan's palms were again after raising it a few times, you can access his throat. The man was so convinced that he lost that he hugged Xiaopingyan and walked away. Xiaopingyan was the only one on the 67th stage. Winners and losers were also decided in other arenas. Xiaopingyan looked at arena number 113 and saw Chuyukin's movements were agile and he was roaming around the entire arena, restraining the person he was fighting against and making him dizzy. After a while, the person who was fighting against Chuyukin saw there was no winner, so he got a little anxious. Chuyukin grabbed his hand skillfully and threw him out of the ring. Chuyukin won. In less than 10 minutes, the winners and losers of all the arenas were decided. Half of the 326 people who came in together were eliminated in the blink of an eye. Many people in the arena have seen blood. Those who were eliminated were taken away directly and left the Judgment Army's camp. Others who were injured were carried directly down. After a battle, Many people had broken arms and legs. In the end, there were only 163 people in each group. On the arena, the atmosphere on the field became solemn. Now, the winner of the number 3 ring position will enter the number 1 ring position, the winner of the number 7 ring position will enter the number 5 ring position, the winner of the number 11 ring position will enter the number 9 ring position, and so on. This round, if you have a bye in the competition, you can go directly to the next one, and you can start. The people in each arena started to move. The people in the 65th arena did not move. Xiaopingyan walked from the 67th to the 65th arena. As for getting a bye in this round, that is luck, and luck is also about ability and strength. The person on the 65th stage is a woman in her 20s, with an agile figure and quite charming appearance. She is wearing a green dress. However, Xiaopingyan does not dare to underestimate this woman. The man who fought with this woman just now, after being kicked in the temple by this woman, he flew out of the ring vomiting blood and was carried off. Mayor has just arrived. She has no one to rely on in the upper capital. She wants to join the judgment army to earn a living. I have someone to rely on. I ask my brother to show mercy when he takes action. Seeing Xiaopingyan coming over, the woman looked pitiful. Saluted Xiaopingyan. Xiaopingyan curled his lips and smiled slightly. Don't worry, sister, I will be gentler in a while. Sister, please don't kick me in the face. The woman looked at Xiaopingyan, her eyes moved, and she smiled like a flower. Why don't I have a literary competition with my brother? If my brother loses, how about taking the initiative to admit defeat and let the younger sister have a round? How to compare? How about guessing? While the two were talking, other people in the ring were already fighting each other. Compared with the first contest just now, the competition between the winners this time was more intense, and the level was obviously improved to a higher level. Xiaopingyan burst out laughing. He was destined to join the judgment army. He didn't want to play any tricks with this woman. Guessing is too easy. My sister wants a literary contest. Why don't we recite poems to compete? You and I can each come up with something. How about judging the winner based on literary talent, and the loser leaves automatically? The woman sighed quietly, with a look of resentment on her face. Brother doesn't want to let me go. Ha ha ha, you can play guessing games with my sister some other time when you have a drink. At this time, since we are not giving in, let's see the real deal with our fists and feet. It's more practical this way, please. Hey, if this is the case, then the little girl will be offended, the woman said, but her move was not ambiguous at all. With a movement of her body, her palm was like a knife, and she thrust it directly towards Xiaopingyan's throat. It was extremely ruthless, and its speed was much faster than Xiaopingyan's opponent just now. Xiaopingyan was also unequivocal and kicked the woman's waist. The woman's figure flashed to the side and raised her crotch and legs directly towards Xiaopingyan. Holy shit! This woman's attack was too harsh. This move forced Xiaopingyan to take a step back. After a few exchanges of moves, Xiaopingyan discovered that this woman was better because of her agility and changeability, but her strength was somewhat lacking compared to her previous opponent. Therefore, this woman's attacks were all killer moves, and she wanted to win with one move. Fists and kicks are probably not what this woman is particularly good at. This woman usually fights with people in close quarters and uses some kind of small weapon. With her speed and agility dominant, if this woman still has a weapon in her hand, then the lethality is completely different. If she met someone else, it might not be difficult for this woman to win again, but if she met Xiaopingyan, it would be like bad luck. After the two sides exchanged several moves, Xiaopingyan used his shoulders and arms to catch the woman's kick to the back of his head, and then grabbed the woman's ankle and launched a series of moves without waiting for the woman to turn around. With a kick, Xiaopingyan swung fiercely, using force to overcome skill, and threw the woman's legs off the ground, spinning like a windmill, and threw her out of the circle with a whoosh from the air. The woman's figure rolled in the air like a gymnast, but she was unable to borrow or unload the force. When she landed, she was already standing several meters away from the yellow line area. Xiaopingan smiled and hugged the woman. The woman gave Xiaopingan a hard look, stamped her foot, turned around and left. Chu Yuqian's victory was a bit difficult. Although Chu Yuqian won, he was beaten by his opponent until he coughed up blood. After this competition, another 81 people were eliminated, leaving only 82 people. Those who were eliminated were led directly out of the military camp. The first selection is over. Everyone, follow me for the second. The two members of the Judgment Army glanced at the people who stayed and continued to lead Xiaopingan and the others towards the military camp. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 169. Golden Summoner. After just a few minutes walk through the school grounds, Xiaopingan and the others were taken to a 3-story platform more than 10 meters above the ground, built entirely with steel bars, rails and various steel structural components. There are no walls or stairs on that high platform. The floor of the high platform and the surrounding walls are full of large and small gaps and holes left by the steel structure. A person can easily get through those gaps and holes. This level will test everyone's basic summoning skills. At the same time, this level will also eliminate at least half of you. There are 82 of you now. After a while, you will each summon a slave soldier to compete. I light a stick of incense. Before the incense burns out, the 41 slave soldiers who can stand on the top of the 3rd floor of the high platform will stay. The summoned slave soldiers are killed and those who are not standing on the high platform will be eliminated. If the last incense burns out and there are more than 41 slave soldiers left on the high platform, all of you will be eliminated. Okay, now we can start. After summoning the slave soldiers, you must immediately issue the task order, and you can only issue the order once. After issuing the order, I will isolate this high platform with the obstruction bead, and no one will be able to issue it again. Second instruction. After the arrogant young man in his 20s finished speaking, he lit an incense burner in an incense burner under a high platform in front of Xiaopingan and the others, and the selection began again. The 82 people who came here did not hesitate. As the red light flashed, they summoned their slave soldiers one by one. Xiaopingan also summoned his elite slave soldiers. He took a look, good fellow, among these 82 people, at least 1/3 can summon elite slave soldiers. This ratio is too high. To be honest, slave summoning is not a basic summoning technique in the Great Yan Kingdom. Some summoners may not master it for a long time after completing the foundation building. But here, the Judgment Army seems to have acquiesced in the people who come here. Have completely mastered the summoning of slave soldiers. In this selection, the reason why the platform chosen looks so complicated and strange is to better test the slave soldiers' force and wisdom. Behind the slave soldiers' force and wisdom, what is indirectly reflected is the summoner's fusion and mastery of the world. In the case of beads, through a small slave soldier, one can complete an assessment and thorough investigation of the situation of the summoner's secret mandala. Xiaopingan immediately understood the purpose of this selection. 82 slave soldiers stood in front of 82 summoners. Mission orders must be issued immediately, and can only be issued once, and cannot be revised midway. This puts higher demands on the slave soldiers' wisdom and judgment. After everyone gave the order, all the summoners began to retreat. The young man who had just explained the rules took out a cyan bead the size of a pigeon egg from his hand. He put the cyan bead towards as soon as it was thrown in the air, the cyan bead flew over the high platform, froze, and bloomed with cyan brilliance in the air. A stream of cyan brilliance hung down from the sky like a waterfall, completely covering the high platform. As soon as the cyan light dropped, Xiaopinggan felt that the connection between himself and the elite slave soldier he summoned was blocked. That cyan bead must be some kind of barrier bead. When used on the battlefield, this thing can isolate the connection between the summoner and the summoned object within a certain range. It is equivalent to remote sensing signal shielding. It looks quite advanced. Xiaopinggan has never seen this thing before. At this time, the abilities of the summoned slave soldiers were revealed. Almost as soon as the blue light fell, slave soldiers began to bite their weapons with their teeth and began to climb along the iron frame on the high platform towards the top floor. But the elite slave soldier summoned by Xiaopinggan was a little different. When the other slave soldiers began to climb, the elite slave soldier summoned by Xiaopinggan ran around the tall building, observing the situation everywhere. He was not in a hurry to climb up, but just downstairs, away from other slave soldiers, he found a corner and made a defensive posture. In just a minute or two, the slave soldiers climbed up to the third floor of the highest platform along the iron pipes and iron frames. 1, 2, 3, more and more. As the number of slave soldiers climbing up began to increase, and after the number of slave soldiers climbing up exceeded 40, the slave soldiers who climbed up first began to prevent the slave soldiers below from continuing to climb up, and the battle between the slave soldiers became here we go. The battle became exciting instantly. The slave soldiers who climbed up along the periphery of the high platform were easily killed by the slave soldiers above who stabbed them down with long spears. As soon as the slave soldiers were killed, the summoners were eliminated. The smarter slave soldiers saw that it was more dangerous to climb up from the periphery of the high platform, so they changed the direction and climbed up layer by layer from the inside of the high platform. When they climbed to the second floor, they used steel structures and steel pipes as cover to break through from the inside of the high-rise building to the top. In this way, both sides will be evenly matched. The Changa spears on the second floor were thrust up through the gaps and loopholes, and could directly pierce and injure the soles and legs of the slave soldiers standing above. Once the slave soldiers above fell to the ground, several spears if you stab it with a spear and fly over with a spear, you can kill the slave soldiers above. Elite slave soldiers with spear throwing skills quickly took advantage at this time, because throwing spears can kill people from a long distance. As long as the elite slave soldiers choose to break through from the inside of the steel building, they have a chance to rush to the high platform. If the slave soldiers on the high platform want to avoid the attack damage to their lower body by the internal slave soldiers on the lower floor, there are only two ways, either to escape from the gaps in the holes that can prevent the slave soldiers below from coming up, or to hide in a few steel pipes and rails. The blind spot area is set up, and these two choices will make it easy for the slave soldiers below to rush up. At the same time, after the elite slave soldiers reached the top, once the space above was crowded, the use of spear throwing skills was greatly restricted and almost useless. On the high platform, the killing sounds of the slave soldiers were loud. In order to seize the position on the high platform, the slave soldiers who climbed to the top were trying their best to prevent the slave soldiers below from climbing up, while the slave soldiers below were trying their best to knock down the slave soldiers above. This scene is exactly the same as a siege. The slave soldiers who were killed kept turning into points of light and dissipating, and there were also slave soldiers who successfully rushed to the high platform. There were more and more slave soldiers on the high platform. Soon, the slave soldiers on the high platform began to avoid those gaps and holes that were vulnerable to attacks from below, began to strive to hide in safe corners. The stupid slave soldiers who stuck to the gaps and holes and tried their best to prevent the slave soldiers below from rushing up were quickly killed by the slave soldiers who rushed up from below. The channels for the slave soldiers below to rush to the high platform were opened one by breakthroughs. More and more slave soldiers rushed to the highest platform. The number of slave soldiers on the high platform soon exceeded 40 or 50, and then the number of slave soldiers on the high platform quickly exceeded 40 or 50. The slave soldiers also started fighting each other. Some slave soldiers were killed by other slave soldiers on the third floor platform, and some slave soldiers were pushed and fell from the third floor platform. The slave soldiers fought extremely fiercely, and they were all fearless of death. It was only at this time that the elite slave soldier summoned by Xiaoping'an, who had been making soy sauce at the bottom, began to climb up. The elite slave soldier summoned by Xiaoping'an was the last slave soldier to start climbing. The elite slave soldier abandoned the changa in his hand and started climbing from the inside of the high platform with only the throwing gun on his back, until he climbed to the bottom of the third floor. Stopped and did not rush up. Instead, he waited under several gaps and holes under the third floor, observing and alert. The incense downstairs is burning out little by little. The fighting on the roof of the third floor quickly came to an end, and those slave soldiers who were not strong enough and had no brains were eliminated one after another. When the incense downstairs finally burned down to less than the length of a finger, the fighting on the rooftop of the third floor finally stopped. On the roof of the third floor, there were 41 slave soldiers standing. Among the 41 slave soldiers, elite slave soldiers accounted for 2/3. Apart from these 41 slave soldiers, there was only the slave soldier summoned by Xiaoping'an. Still observing, alert, and waiting below the second floor. The other slave soldiers have died. The slave soldier summoned by Xiaoping'an finally took out the throwing gun in his hand at this time. His body was beating, using the terrain below to cover his body while trying to escape from the gaps and holes. Throw the spear upward. In order to prevent the slave soldiers above from becoming the target of attacks from below, 41 slave soldiers surged on the third floor, avoiding the holes and gaps where they were vulnerable, just for the spears of the elite slave soldiers. The required holes and gaps can be attacked as long as the size of a fist, and the throwing spear can be thrown from any place below. Before the elite slave soldiers summoned by Xiaoping'an attacked, chaos broke out above. The terrain on the lower floor is open, allowing you to run, jump, and dodge. The more than 40 slave soldiers above are huddled together, and each slave soldier's activity space is completely compressed and cannot be used. As the elite slave soldiers summoned by Xiaoping'an kept moving and making attacking postures, the slave soldiers above were like ducks being chased, running here and there in order to avoid the tools coming from below. Zi ran there. In this case, the few blind spots where you can avoid the attacks below become precious. Something happened suddenly on the top floor. A slave soldier suddenly stabbed to death an elite slave soldier who was hiding in the blind corner of the attack with the spear in his hand, disappeared, and rushed to the blind corner. There were 2 other slave soldiers who followed the same pattern. A conflict broke out instantly among the slave soldiers on the top floor, and 3 more slave soldiers died. This time, the number of slave soldiers on the top floor increased to 38. At this time, the elite slave soldier Xiaoping'an summoned took advantage of the moment of chaos on the attic and rushed up through a hole. The final number of slaves left on the top floor was 39. The elite slave soldier summoned by Xiaoping'an had hardly experienced any battles and had never killed any slave soldiers. In the end, he easily stood on the top floor and successfully advanced. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 170. In this third level, 43 people were eliminated in one go. Xuanhuan also passed this level. The 43 people who were eliminated were led away by the member of the Judgment Army who was in his 20s and left the camp directly. The only man left at the scene was the man in his 30s with 2 stars on his shoulder straps. Although they passed this level, the atmosphere at the scene was still tense. Everyone who stayed knew that there would be more severe tests ahead. Congratulations on passing the first 3 levels. It can be said that those who remain now are all the best before the Yang realm. The next level is very simple. It also tests your ability to summon. I summon a warrior comes out, and you take turns according to the number in your hand, and summon the summon that you think is the most powerful. Remember, you only have one chance to summon, as long as your summon can defeat the one summoned by me. This warrior, you have passed this level. If your summons are killed by my summons, you will be eliminated. Is this clear? The rule was simple and clear, and everyone nodded. Okay, now that it's clear, let's start. Starting from number 7, the man in his 30s with 2 stars on his epaulet pointed to a summoner who got number 7. That summoner has the smallest number among all the people. The summoners numbered 1 to 6 in front of him have been eliminated in the previous few battles. Among the summoners numbered 1 to 10, only he stayed alone, and now there were only 1 or 2 out of 10 people left. That person was the first to appear, and he obviously felt a little nervous, but it was impossible to give him much time to adapt. Everyone dispersed and gave up the space. As the man in his 30s with 2 stars on his epaulet stretched out his hand, a black mist suddenly appeared in the open space in front of everyone. From the black mist, a man holding a hand slowly walked out. He is a majestic warrior wearing a majestic and shining armor with a huge sword that is nearly 2 meters long. Xiaopinggan looked at the summoned warrior, and was slightly shocked. The warrior was wearing armor. There were 2 large round guards on the left and right sides of the breastplate. It is covered with leg skirts, all made of armor, and there are tiger head shoulder pads on the shoulders, which are gorgeous in shape. This armor is clearly the Mingguang armor of the Tang dynasty. Couldn't that man be summoning an elite warrior from the Tang dynasty? The first man to appear with the number 7 card was a little nervous, but under the gaze of everyone, he still took a deep breath and started to summon. There was a flash of light in the field, and the man summoned an assassin came out wearing black clothes, covering his head and face, and holding a short sword. As long as you summon it, you can start. The man in his 30s with 2 stars on his epaulet said calmly. The assassin took the initiative and rushed towards the Tang dynasty warrior, his body twisting strangely like a firework, and the short sword in the assassin's hand was suddenly hidden in his sleeve. The 2 sides began to fight. When the assassin rushed to the front of the warrior more than 3 meters away, he waved his hand and threw out several rays of cold light, hitting the face, neck, and chest of the Tang warrior. The Tang warrior just raised his hands. Protecting his head and face with both hands, the dart he threw fell to the ground after hitting the Mingguang armor on the Tang dynasty warrior. The attack failed and the darts were useless. The assassin dwarfed and flew forward close to the ground, trying to get behind the Tang warrior. The dagger in his sleeve appeared in his hand, intending to cut him from behind. The Tang warrior's neck was kicked from behind, but it went straight to the Tang warrior's crotch. The attack of the summoned one could not be described as strange and vicious, and his figure could not be described as agile and cunning. However, Xiaopinggan looked at it and shook his head secretly. On this occasion, the assassin was summoned to fight against the samurai. The suddenness and concealment of the assassin were already gone. Without it, the assassin is actually half useless. Just like when 2 armies are fighting and you arrange the assassin to charge, the time and space here are not advantageous to the assassin. Maybe number 7 wants to give it a try. Maybe this assassin may be the strongest person number 7 can summon, but Xiaopinggan is not optimistic. Faced with the attack at this moment, the Tang dynasty warrior suddenly turned around, swung the sword in his hand, and with a dang sound, he blocked the knife that was aimed at his neck. As for the assassin's kick, the Tang warrior didn't care about the kick that came over. The moment the Tang warrior turned around, that kick was directly blocked by the leg skirt of Mingguang armor. The next second, the warrior of the Tang dynasty suddenly stepped forward. The huge sword in his hand flexibly turned and slashed diagonally. It was as brilliant as practice. The assassin was short and wanted to retreat, but the sword was too long and too big. The 2-meter radius was covered by that move. The sword slashed diagonally like a door panel, and the sharp edge cut from a high place. Go to a lower place, there is no way to avoid it. The assassin can only use the dagger to block and intercept, but in the eyes of Xiaopinggan and everyone else, They saw that the dagger in the assassin's hand and the assassin's body were cut in two by the Tang warrior's sword. The sword was so powerful that it could not be blocked by the assassin's dagger. The assassin turned into black smoke and disappeared. Number 7 looked bitter and silently retreated. Next. The man in his 30s with 2 stars on his epaulet said calmly. The next person to play is number 12. Number 12 was still a male summoner. After he came on stage, he gritted his teeth and waved his hand, and summoned a cavalryman on a war horse. The cavalry also wore armor and carried spears. The war horse stepped on the same spot twice, and the cavalryman clamped his legs on the horse's belly. The war horse neighed and accelerated, with the sound of hooves thundering, and rushed towards the Tang warrior. This is a duel between cavalry and Zanma swords. The two sides soon met. The moment the spear approached, the Tang dynasty warrior holding the horse-cutting sword jumped up fiercely. The horse-cutting sword in his hand slashed Xuanhuan from top to bottom, and slashed out with one strike. The horse-zapping sword directly cut off the neck of the war horse. The horse's head fell off, and the entire war horse turned into light mist and dissipated. The cavalryman on the war horse fell heavily to the ground. Before he could get up, the horse-zapping sword was holding the horse's head. The warriors of the Tang dynasty had already rushed over. They kicked the spears from the cavalry's hands, stepped on the cavalry's chest, then raised their sabers and chopped off the cavalry's heads with one blow. The summoned cavalry also dissipated. Summoner number 12 retired sadly. Next. Number 26 came on the stage. This number 26 was also a female summoner. She was quite beautiful, but she had an indifferent face. As soon as number 26 came on the stage, she summoned a blood-red giant python 17 or 8 meters long. When the summoner's onlookers saw the giant python, many of them took a breath of air and quietly took a few steps back. The blood-red giant python was twisting on the ground, getting closer to the Tang warrior. This time, the warrior of the Tang dynasty looked like he was facing a formidable enemy. He held the sword in his hand in a defensive posture and carefully confronted the blood-red giant python. After a moment, the warrior of the Tang dynasty chose to attack actively. He rushed over with his sword and slashed at the blood-red python. The blood-red giant python seemed to be waiting for this moment. When it saw the Tang warrior rushing towards him, the blood-red giant python opened its mouth and spit out a stream of black smoke, which immediately enveloped the Tang warrior. As the black smoke dissipated, the Tang dynasty warrior's face turned dark, and the Mingguang armor on his body seemed to have lost its luster. His figure was shaky and fell directly to the ground. The giant python opened its mouth and swallowed the Tang warrior from head to toe bit by bit. This game, number 26 wins. Next one. The man in his 30s with 2 stars on his epaulet said, summoning another Tang warrior who was exactly the same as before. Number 26 waved his hand, and the bloody python disappeared. Summoner number 34 begins to play. Summoner number 34 summoned an archer. The archer was agile and never approached the Tang warrior. Instead, he kept a distance of more than 30 meters from the Tang warrior and attacked directly with his bow and arrow. After shooting more than 10 arrows, the human archer summoned by number 34 hit the Tang warrior in the face with one arrow. The Tang warrior disappeared and number 34 passed the level again. Xiaoping'an was the 7th to play. Through the few observations just now, Xiaoping'an has probably figured out the combat effectiveness of the Tang dynasty warrior, so Xiaoping'an, who came on stage, didn't talk nonsense and directly used 108 points of divine power to summon a Xuanhuan the size of a wash basin. Xuanhuan's victory was a clean one. As soon as Xuanhuan came out and breathed out, a layer of frost formed on the Tang dynasty warrior's face, armor, saber, and the ground. The temperature in the competition venue suddenly dropped a lot, and many people were beaten. A shiver. The Tang warrior with ice on his body was like a rusty robot, with stagnant joints and slow movements. Then Xuanhuan flew over and bit the Tang warrior's leg. The black water instantly covered the Tang warrior, and the Tang warrior turned into black ice. The black ice then shattered, and the Tang warrior dissipated. The Xuanhuan summoned by Xiaopinggan was the fastest and most decisive in resolving the battle. Everyone around looked at Xiaopinggan. The man from the Judgment Army also took a deep look at Xiaopinggan again. After several tests, everyone discovered that Xiaopinggan was special, and Xiaopinggan had already stood out. This game, number 68 wins, the next one. The people behind summoned various summons to fight with the Tang dynasty warrior, but not many people could kill the Tang warrior. On average, only one of every 3 or so summoners could. Success. The one Chuyukin summoned was also an archer, and he also won. Of the 39 summoners, only 12 passed this level in the end.